Unemployment actually changes how your brain works. If you've been feeling demotivated after facing countless job rejections and worthless because you're broke, you're not alone. I experienced the same feeling over the last few years. But what I didn't realize was how this was slowly making things feel worse. Once you understand the psychology behind this, unemployment will start to make a lot more sense. So, the first question we need to answer is, why does unemployment affect us so much? Because once we understand this, the psychology behind the feeling will be a lot easier to understand. And from my experience, it really comes down to a couple of reasons. So the first reason is that we find ourselves stuck in the exact same position, despite how much effort we've put in to try getting out of it. And I remember when I was doing so many courses, I was enhancing my resume so that I could be more employable. So when I was still getting rejected, it felt very demotivating. And the other reason is that we feel like we're falling behind in our life, which is completely normal. As this is something I've seen others post on social media as well, sharing their thoughts and personal experiences. Since we attach a lot of meaning to these things, it affects us a lot because it impacts something much deeper, which is our identity. Turns out that there's even research that shows a connection between unemployment and its impacts on our mental health. So we know the reason why this happens. But how does unemployment affect us? Well, it starts in a place that you wouldn't really expect, your hormones. Now consider this scenario. Imagine you've been selected for a job interview after months of applying. You know, you've been spending so much time rehearsing your answers to give yourself the best chance of passing the interview. Everything went well and now you're anticipating the outcome. So you check your email a few days later and see a rejection. You might be able to deal with this once, but after a number of times, it starts to have a knock-on effect. And it's not just job rejections that affect us this way. It could be because of money, a decline in physical health that you might be experiencing, or a lack of social interactions. And when you experience this, your body goes through what is called a stress response. And what this basically means is when you feel like your efforts are barely moving the needle, your body releases a hormone called cortisol, and high amounts of it in the body can have different effects. Without getting too much into the science behind this, what that does to the brain is that high amounts of stress lead to a lack of motivation and also drive, which is why you feel anxious and depressed when you're stuck in the same routine every single day. And it's known that stress is a contributor to psychological distress. But this is only part of a bigger picture. It's actually the next thing that starts to affect the way you feel about yourself. Right now, I'm sure you're aware of the current job market situation. It's pretty brutal and is very difficult to land a job, which has affected a lot of younger people as well as recent graduates. And I was one of them back in 2022. I applied to hundreds of jobs and it was getting to the point where I felt mentally burnt out. I had applied to so many jobs on LinkedIn which never got back. Unknowingly, I had actually been applying to ghost jobs on Indeed, and multiple in-person interviews I was failing them. And eventually it got to the point where I thought to myself, what is the point in doing any of this if I know what the outcome is going to be? A rejection. Even completing courses that would help me get into a job weren't working out. And I literally felt I had the worst possible luck. I hadn't realized it, but I was experiencing what is called learned helplessness. And what this means is when we go through negative experiences that we have no control over, so like being rejected or the current job market situation, we start to feel like our efforts will not result in the outcome that we're hoping to achieve. These negative experiences make us believe that our situation will never change. And the reason why this impacts our identity so much is because external circumstances change how we feel about things, whether it's to do with money, our body, and even our career. As a result of all of that, you feel helpless. And where things start to become even more challenging is when this affects how we behave. I'm sure you've been in this position before. You know you have so much work to do, whether it's coding stuff for your portfolio or it's finishing off a course that, you started so long ago. But for some reason, when you sit down at your desk to do the work, your brain literally does not allow you to do it. It doesn't have the mental capacity to focus on those heavy tasks, so then you think of another way to spend your time on something much easier, such as doom scrolling on social media. Well, I guess the stress from unemployment doesn't help things out at all. In fact, it slowly makes things worse because it narrows your cognitive bandwidth. So basically, your brain has a certain amount of energy, and when you feel stressed out, the amount of energy it has to allocate to particular tasks is reduced, which explains why when you're sitting down to do something, you literally have no drive, because doing things like sending out job applications, managing your finances, or even upskilling to become more employable, it's a lot to deal with. It's so hard to be consistent with this routine every single day, and many times you feel like giving up. I mean, it's implied that we're defined by the actions that we take, and with the external circumstances associated with unemployment, it influences how we react to things, and we start to notice our identity shifting. So the bigger picture here is actually to do with self-concept, or simply how we think about ourselves. Now, there is a stigma around unemployment where you're not working hard enough or you're not making good money, and this can really impact the way we see ourselves. That's why when we experience things like job rejections, we feel, like we're less capable to do things. Or when we feel like buying something and we don't have enough money, it impacts your confidence and we feel worthless. And you're not wrong to feel this way. This is unfortunately what it means to be unemployed. If you've been feeling stuck or you've been feeling frustrated about your situation, you know it's not your fault. It's just the result of the circumstances unemployment has put you through. And once you understand this, your situation will make a lot more sense. And this is something I realized after transitioning into long-term unemployment. And I was also unaware of some of the things that go quiet during unemployment, which is why I made this video over here if you would like to take a look. Until the next time, I wish you the best of luck and hope that your situation gets much better. Take care.